I haven't really been able to talk a lot about the making of Lights Out because there hasn't been any material that I could show. Well, since there's now a trailer, I figured I could talk about some of the stuff that's in it. I'm used to making films with no money, so when I found out the budget for Lights Out would be something like $5 million, I thought we can do whatever we want. Explosions and dinosaurs. Well, no. For a Hollywood studio film, that's actually not a lot of money, so being used to a do-it-yourself approach came in handy at times. One of the problems with shooting silhouettes is that you can't tell which way the person is turned or where the person is looking. For that, and just for the creep factor, I wanted our creature to have eyes that reflected light, kind of like a cat. Well, the first thing I was told was that we didn't have money to CGI glowing eyes for a bunch of shots. But I figured we didn't need CGI, that there was a way to achieve it in camera. My first thought was Blade Runner. That movie had glowing eyes before CGI was really a thing, so I looked up how they did that effect. Well, it turns out it was using a complicated beam splitter rig with one-way mirrors and stuff, like how 3D movies are shot nowadays. So that seemed too complicated. But then I remembered that years ago I read an article in Fangoria about a horror movie where they somehow made glowing eyes using reflective tape. So I went to the nearest hardware store, bought some reflective tape, and with the help of Lotta, we put together this test. So here's how it's done. On Lotta's eyes, there's some reflective tape, and then next to the camera, you have a light that's not bright enough to make her visible, but to reflect the eyes. And that's pretty much how we did it in the film. A weak light right next to the camera lens and some reflective tape. We did figure out a way that didn't require our actress Alicia to keep her eyes closed though. Would have been hard for her to do stunts while blind. All the shots in the trailer that look like old 8mm film I shot myself with my Blackmagic pocket camera. I shot it in this configuration that kind of resembles an old 8mm camera. The first step in emulating 8mm footage is to shoot it like 8mm footage would have been shot. The second step is to add the imperfections of film like grain and blurriness and adjusting colors and contrast. The grain I use is actually a single still image of scanned in photographic film grain that I randomly move around every frame. I've created my own grain node in Blender that moves the grain around for me and applies it the way I like it. I don't go for total accuracy, more for the right feel that I'm after. I also shot these light leaks to put on top. There's a bunch of light leaks that you can download online, but I just took off the lens on the camera, held my fingers in front of the sensor, and let light come in here and there. I did a lot of storyboards for this film. Here's an example of one of my storyboards and what the final shot looks like. For some sequences, I took the storyboards and made little story reels with them. It's just the images and me narrating them, but they were useful to convey what I wanted. We see Paul walk from his office towards the exit, but he stops when he hears a noise. He's supposed to be alone now. Paul goes to investigate. He stops at the main factory floor. There's that noise again. It's coming from that aisle between the machines. Paul stops as he sees the crouched down silhouette of what appears to be a woman sitting in between the lights on the other end of the aisle. That's been the biggest difference between making films with just Lotta and working with a whole film crew. When it's just Lotta and I, it's easy to imagine something and then just go and do it. Now I had to learn how to communicate what my vision was to a whole bunch of people so they could make that happen. I made most of the storyboards with Toon Boom Storyboard Pro. I'm not a big fan of the drawing tools, but it's great for organizing boards and printing them out. For my next film, I'll try and use Krita more because it has fantastic drawing tools, and I'm a big fan and supporter of open source software. The first scene you see in the trailer was the last thing we shot for the film. For the longest of time we had this temp shot of an exterior that I shot myself on the pocket camera. During post, before we could lock the edit, we had to shoot a proper exterior somewhere. This is actually a building on the Warner Brothers studio lot. Since Conjuring 2 was shooting there, I could borrow some of their crew to help me get this shot. I sent this image over to them and asked them to add a truck and some set dressing, and these lights that would shine down on a sign that I would add later digitally. The full shot in the film is longer and starts out looking into a street light, so I made this animatic in Blender to show the crew what kind of camera move I wanted. For the final shot, I did a 3D camera solve in Blender and put some text on the wall. Not to make it seem like I did all the effects in this film, I just did a handful. We had a proper VFX company to do the majority of the VFX. But the truth is, there aren't that many VFX shots in Lights Out. The creature was done practically, so a lot of the effects were for removing things. Like in this shot. You see, whenever you're in or near a road, everyone in the crew has to wear high visibility vests. Well, the problem with high visibility vests is that they're highly visible, even when you're trying to hide behind the hedges. So things like that had to be taken out. I've read a lot of comments online about how the trailer shows too much, and while I don't exactly disagree, here's some things you should know. This conversation,
every time I turn off the lights, there's this woman.
Never happens in the film. That was something shot just for the trailer. The same with the voiceovers you hear, like, everyone is afraid of the dark, that's what she feeds on, just for the trailer. In fact, the line about each one of us is being haunted,
Each one of us is being haunted by this thing.
well, that's not even Teresa, that's some other girl they found who sounds kind of similar. The things you do see from the film differ as well, sometimes a lot. This scene plays out very differently in the film. See, marketing takes bits and pieces of the film and cut together their own scenes for the trailer. Sometimes with funny results, like I love how the trailer implies that Teresa's character says, "We need to find more light," and then voluntarily proceeds to go down into a basement like a complete moron. So just because you've seen the trailer does not mean you've seen the film. In fact, one of my favorite characters in the whole film is just in this brief shot in the trailer. Sorry, Alex, I didn't cut the trailer. We were happy to see that they included Lotta in the trailer, though, to show people that this film actually came from the short. It still hasn't stopped people from asking me, "Dude, did you know Hollywood ripped off your short?" Yeah, they stole Lotta and everything. Damn Hollywood. And finally, if you're curious what it's like to be a filmmaker, let me demonstrate. An average film has over 1,000 shots in it, and here's one of them from Lights Out. You probably didn't notice anything strange with it, but you see that right there? That's a roll of bubble wrap that someone thought would be out of frame up there. But it wasn't, and while you didn't see it, I do. Every time I see this shot, that's what I'm looking at. Of course, there's not going to be bubble wrap in every shot. Bubble wrap guy would have been fired long before that. But there's going to be something. Something that is going to be the only thing you think about every time you see it. And that's what it's like to be a filmmaker.